On my birthday last year is when I found out I broke my foot. And I was out the whole year. It was a tough year. And then for the Pelicans to come give me this birthday gift, I'm not gonna let them down. I'm not gonna let the city down. I'm not gonna let my family down. And most of all, I'm not gonna let myself down. So just thank you.
Bottom line is, New Orleans is making a statement. We here, and we ain't playing, and you're going to have to come through us in the Western Conference, and everybody better stand up and take notice, because they real.
It's really hard to believe that this monstrous statement dunk from Zion Williamson happened this season. For me, it's also hard to believe that the Pelicans were actually the 1 seed this season. Not because I don't have faith in the team or anything like that, it just feels like it happened a decade ago for whatever reason. While I'm using hyperbole here, my point remains the same, and that point is that seasons are long and quite literally anything can happen in them. Even the New Orleans Pelicans getting compared to the 21-22 Bulls. Guys, I almost broke down when I heard somebody say this, because I mean there's no way. That can't be us, right? As good as that Bulls team was playing last season, they still couldn't be the top team if their life depended on it. For those who need a brief refresher, that 21-22 Bulls team consisting of like Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Vooch, Caruso, and Ball wasn't the best team or really much different from the team that they have now, but they played really well together while being up-tempo, exciting, easy to root for, and also, like the Pelicans, good. I'll never forgive the basketball guys for what they did to ZO2's knee, and what that did to that season for the Chicago Bulls. The same way that I also won't forgive them if they don't let Zion Williamson return to being Zion Williamson, because there's no other way to put it. These recent updates have been brutal, and we have to get into that, but first, I want to give a huge shout out to Surfshark for sponsoring today's content. Surfshark is a VPN that keeps your online identity safe by encrypting all of the information sent between your device and the internet. This keeps your personal data protected from big companies or even cyber criminals. Surfshark also lets you trick your device into thinking that you're in an entirely different country, which is not only good for security, but it also gives you access to content libraries for places that you currently aren't. You'll be able to watch sports games, movies, and series that aren't available in your region for whatever reason. You can miss the big game if you want to, but not me because I'll be using Surfshark. If you want to be like me, remember to use code GETLIKECOOP when you sign up so that you can get 83% off and 3 extra months free. Guys, the link to everything that you need will be located in the description below. Since January 2nd, the New Orleans Pelicans are 7-15. What's so special about January 2nd is that it's the day that Zion Williamson would leave the game against the Philadelphia 76ers in the third quarter with a hamstring injury after gathering a rebound and attempting to push the ball down the floor. This was an injury that the Pelicans couldn't afford, already being down a star and high-level creator with Brandon Ingram on the shelf. For a large part of this season, Brandon Ingram has been battling a lingering toe issue that honestly I'm still worried about to this day with the way that he's described its effects. Brandon Ingram has never struck me as a complainer, so when he airs his grievances, I listen. With Zion out of the lineup, the least that the Pelicans could have done was stay afloat until he returned. But that isn't what would happen at all, as the team would go on a 10-game losing streak shortly after his injury. There's an MVP joke to be made there, but I'm not going to make it right now, simply because I'm too frustrated. I understand that losing streaks happen, and they happen especially when there are injuries, but you just had to see the way that this team was losing. Things got ugly in New Orleans, and they got ugly fast. The Pelicans' 10-game losing streak would be the 4th longest losing streak this season. The only other teams that had longer losing streaks would be the Houston Rockets, who are cruising for Wemby and realistically shouldn't be as bad as they are with 13, and the San Antonio Spurs, who are basically doing the same thing, but a little differently because they've had 2 streaks that actually have exceeded 10 games. But you know what? It's all good because I know that Jeremy Sohan is going to get them some more wins. That's a name that you guys are going to be hearing really often, really soon. I really have to give a salute to these 2 teams because they've got losing down to a science. I don't know who's worse, them or the guys in your fantasy leagues who just stopped setting their lineups when the season is still rolling. Though Ingram's return would help to bolster a stagnant offense, it was still clear that this roster needed to be strengthened. I thought it was a fairly safe assumption that this team would make a big-time impact move prior to the trade deadline. I thought David Griffin might do something like pushing some of that draft capital in and taking a swing. And I guess you could say that he would do that. It's just not for who I expected. I still can't believe that the Los Angeles Lakers were able to get Jared Vanderbilt, Malik Beasley, and Mo Bamba for as cheap as they did. Meanwhile, we had to give up 4 second-round picks and Devontae Graham, who was essentially a salary dump, for Josh Richardson. When I'm seeing reports that link the New Orleans Pelicans to players like John Collins, OG Anunoby, and Gary Trent Jr., I'm expecting that we're going to get a big-time player at the trade deadline. I mean, come on, in the offseason, we were even kicking rocks on KD. I thought that David Griffin was about to put on the blindfold and swing. The last guy that I expected us to push picks in for was Josh Richardson from the San Antonio Spurs. Now, I know it's kind of sounding like I don't like Josh right now, but that is definitely not the case. I love him as a player. It's just that Mike Scotto had me believing that this guy might be available for just 1 second-round pick. When you put it all together, we had to trade the number 15 pick to get Devontae Graham, and then we had to trade him and multiple seconds for Josh Richardson. I just find it hard to believe that the Spurs, who are now interested in building up assets, didn't have any interest in Billy Hernan-Gomez or Jackson Hayes in place of a few of those picks. I guess at the end of the day, I'm kind of glad that we didn't do anything too drastic, because it's clear that teams coveted our wings, and trading them this early into their career would have definitely been a mistake. Herb has his flaws, but that doesn't change the fact that he's a top-notch defender who is still continuing to find ways to be valuable on offense when that shot isn't falling. And then when it comes to Trey Murphy, I flat out think that this guy can be a star and is the perfect fit next to Zion, or really any star player. He's long, he's athletic, and he can shoot. His game just really fits the modern NBA. Like I alluded to earlier, the Pelicans having a relatively quiet trade deadline wouldn't really be the end of the world. I mean, there's no way I'm going to be mad at Josh Richardson, the guy that just had a 10-point, 5-steal, and 2-block debut for the New Orleans Pelicans. We already know that Josh Richardson is a good slasher and a fantastic defender. If he knocks down threes consistently in New Orleans, which I know that he can do, I might mess around and buy a jersey. Guys, our team is still young, it's still talented, it's just that unfortunately, our core hasn't played the most time together, which can make making the right move a lot more complicated. Guys, Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson have only played together in 12 games this season. To take things a step further, according to Pro Pel's Talk, out of 283 games since 2019, Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson would only play together for 93 of those games. That's 33% of the games that they could have played in since the start of the 2019 season. Guys, that's not great. What is great is how good this team looked when Zion was healthy. Remember, guys, before Zion Williamson went down, he had people thinking that this squad could potentially contend this year. A healthy Zion Williamson averaged 29.8 points, 7.5 rebounds, and 5.1 assists in December. What's terrifying is that he was only getting started. If you get this guy back, then who knows what happens? But you see, that's the thing. As of right now, we don't know when he's returning. 2 weeks ago, we would get a very positive update that seemed as if Zion was trending in the right direction. Not only would Zion be trending in the right direction, it was reported that he might participate in the All-Star game if he was physically able to. Which, speaking of the All-Star game, apparently a lot of people were mad that he was an All-Star period, but we're not going to get into that right now. Anyways, since that All-Star game report, the reports would just kind of start to get gradually worse until we would get the big one dropped on us. February 12th, David Griffin would announce that Zion had re-aggravated his hamstring injury and would be looking at missing multiple weeks post-All-Star break. David Griffin would go on to say that he would be re-evaluated after the team would return from the break. According to Griffin, Zion had progressed all the way up to 3-on-3 work before the re-aggravation. Shams would add in that Zion could be out for at least another month, and that him missing through at least mid-March is entirely likely. Woj would reiterate the same sentiment, calling the timetable open-ended. Now, generally, I'm not a big worrier, but right now, I'm honestly pretty worried. It's never good to see injuries pile up on a player who's so young and talented. And I mean, come on, a hamstring injury? We know how annoying that an injury like this can be to deal with. Guys, I love my New Orleans Pelicans, I promise you that. But if there's one thing that I absolutely do not trust this team with, it is injury news. So all I'll say is that take this timetable with a grain of salt, hope for the best, but expect the worst. Now, mind you that the ramp-up process itself will take time also, and with Zion already having a setback, the Pelicans will have to again be incredibly cautious. I feel incredibly terrible about all of this, because while this news is heartbreaking for the New Orleans Pelicans, it's infinitely worse for Zion Williamson, who worked so hard this offseason to put himself in a position to prove everybody wrong. It's hard to imagine having all of the talent and all of the skill to be one of the most dominant players in the world, but yet consistently being held back by injury. Now, the good news for the New Orleans Pelicans is that according to Andrew Lopez and ESPN Analytics, the team does have the easiest remaining schedule in the league according to win percentage. This team has surprised people before when Zion Williamson was out, so don't be surprised if they do it again. I still think that people don't really understand that Brandon Ingram has top 10 potential in this league. What he did against the Suns in the playoffs last season was no fluke, because he was doing that the entire year. When he is on the floor, he's one of the best point forwards in the game and an undeniable ceiling raiser. We talk about Zion a lot, but this team needs BI also, and now they need him more than ever. While I'm sure that the Pelicans medical staff is doing their best, it's clear that something has to change. I'm tired of having setbacks and day-to-days turning into week-to-weeks and so on. Pelicans fans, with what you know now, let me know how your expectations for this season have changed, if they've changed at all. Also, let me know what a successful season looks like to you. Personally, I'm a simple guy. I just want to see good competitive basketball and some growth, not only from the players, but also from the coaches. Guys, in the comments below, let me know what you think of everything. Clicking the video on the screen right now is a great way to support my channel. I'm GETLIKECOOP, bringing you guys the scoop until our next upload.